Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
What's poppin', fantasy champs? It's August. Training camp is in full swing.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, do you know what that means? Like, literally, I just had a realization that this freaking Thursday is preseason football. Like, it starts. Hall of Fame game. And I think it's moving. This is draft month.
Dude, that's crazy.
That's where people draft. Our home league drafts in September. So it's not draft month for us.
No, not for us, but for most people it is.
But for most people it is. Welcome to the official grind that is fantasy football, where you set the foundation of your fantasy championship. And welcome on into the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. My name is Morgan Colby, Rick Lemon over on the other side of the screen.
What's going on?
We got some good goobly-goop to get into today. We
never
have
heard that one from you.
Say it again?
I've never heard that one from you.
Goobly-goop, yeah. Hey, listen, try new things. We're going to talk about our top value picks for the running back and wide receiver positions crammed together into one show. We're going to talk about 5 guys, 3 wide receivers, 2 tight ends, and we'll go through that. I think also I just wanted to touch on, because I want to try to get this done in 25 as usual, but I wanted to touch on a couple of hot points that happened over the last couple weeks or days or whatever. So anyway, I already said our names, right, Rick?
Yes, you did.
Okay, all right.
That's a good time.
Before we jump into that, check out our website, fantasychampions.com. Follow us on any social media platforms. Just type in the Fantasy Champs. You'll be good. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or any other podcast platforms, be sure to leave a review, share this podcast with your friends. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, and then like and comment down below what your thoughts are on our value picks here for the 2021 fantasy football season. I'm going to pull up. Okay, all right, hold on a second. My computer is spazzing. I'll pull up some player news. So we had a couple of pieces of news that I wanted to touch on before we jump into this. First off, Danny Etling was claimed by the Seattle Seahawks.
I'm so glad that was a part of the news. I think everybody needs to know that.
No, so the first one was Carson Wentz ended up popping his I don't even know.
Oh, he got hurt.
Yeah, he got hurt. Hold on, I'm looking it up.
Yeah.
To get full details. So anyway, he ended up getting hurt in practice. He injured his foot, and they said that he is going to undergo foot surgery. He's going to be out for 5 to 12 weeks. That's 12 weeks. That's what came in today. Rick, what are your thoughts on the situation with Indianapolis? Does this obviously this leads to concern for the wide receivers that we may have liked in this system, but does this lead to any concern about Jonathan Taylor?
Yeah, I'm not too worried about Jonathan Taylor, because to me they're still going to run the ball heavy.
Okay.
So he'll get his work on the ground. If anything, they're going to run the ball more now. But passing wise, yeah.
How good is the team going to be?
Yeah, and that's the other concern. Is I'm not sure. Now they're still in a very weak division. They're going to play Houston, which may or may not have Deshaun Watson.
Okay.
They're going to play Jacksonville, who is Jacksonville, and then the Titans. So I don't know what their schedule in the beginning of the season is, but I'm assuming it's nothing too crazy. But they will obviously be a much worse team, like if Jacob Eason is starting. Yeah. So that would be a concern too. It's more like slight concerns, but it's nothing major for Jonathan Taylor.
So for me, I'm on the flip side. I think without Carson Wentz, the Indianapolis Colts' offense is not going to be Colts is. I don't even know if that's the right way of saying that. But anyway, the Colts' offense is not going to be as good. And I'm already lately, I love Jonathan Taylor. Love Jonathan Taylor. But lately, I've been kind of nervous about Jonathan Taylor because there have been a lot of reports coming out of camp about Marlon Mack and how he looks good. And obviously, I don't think he's going to be very good, but they still like him in Indianapolis. And that he and Nyheim Hines are going to be involved in some way. And so that, A, is concerning for Jonathan Taylor in this context that I think everyone's assuming that he's going to get a full 250-plus touch workload, which I don't know is going to happen. To pile on top of that, you also have an injury at the quarterback position, which is most likely going to lead to this team not having the most efficient offense, which is going to limit his scoring potential. So I'm not saying he's going to suck and that you shouldn't draft him, but he is getting drafted as a top 6-7 running back.
Which, that would definitely scare me if he's that high. Yeah. Also, they actually have a very hard schedule to start the season, and if they're without Carson Wentz, they could start in a real hole. They play Seattle, the Rams, the Titans, the Dolphins, and the Ravens are their first 5 games.
Yikes! It sounds like
without Carson Wentz, could they win any of those, or do they go 0-5
for a second?
Like that would be interesting.
I think there's a lot to be concerned about with Jonathan Taylor, and I think I put out a tweet earlier this week, and maybe we can do a whole show on this. That would be kind of a cool idea. But anyway, some of the riskiest running backs in the first round, or the riskiest players in the first round, and I think those 3 riskiest players have to be Saquon Barkley with his leg injuries, Jonathan Taylor with the situation now with Carson Wentz too, adding on top of that, and I forgot who the other one was, but it's just like I think that if you're in that middle range and you're questioning whether you should go with Ezekiel Elliott or Jonathan Taylor, I'm starting to lean a little bit towards Zeke.
Me too.
But anyway, so the other small piece of news: Dak Prescott did. He was throwing at training camp practice last week, and then he left the game with arm soreness. They said it was precautionary, and then he underwent an MRI. And he has been diagnosed with a strained muscle in his throwing shoulder, which isn't good. Mike McCarthy did come out and say that the shoulder injury is minor and that they're just taking him out and giving a couple days off, and he's day-to-day. So from what I'm hearing is that it's not big, but for a quarterback who's coming back already from a massive ankle injury from last year, that's mentally that's hard to recover from. Now he's got shoulder problems. Is this something to watch out for as we move forward? And does it lead to concern for guys like Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb going into this season?
It 100% will if it lingers. But if hopefully it just goes away. It doesn't seem it was definitely scary. But I did see him sprinting. I want to say like 2 days ago.
Okay. On
Twitter, like he was doing drills where he was running back and forth and doing suicides and stuff. So I think he'll be okay.
Yeah.
I think it'll be fine, but it is definitely something to keep your eye on.
Okay. Let's move on to the main event.
Okay.
We'll talk about 5 guys. We'll try to do this pretty maybe 3 to 5 minutes per player.
Okay.
We'll try. So we'll start with the running back position, and the first guy we have is Chris Carson, who currently is RB 19 going off the board.
Sleeper.
And I think if there's a value pick right there, that would be it. I also want to say on, I believe on Fantasy Pros website, they have aggregated ADP of multiple positions, and he is currently RB 20. So, I think for a guy that I've not really been too excited about, pretty much at all, ever, he's definitely at this point a guy that people are letting slip down the board and becoming a really good value. And I think that normally at his ADP of last year, like RB, I think it was like 15. If he was at that range, I would be a little bit more like, okay, now we can make a decision on whether or not we actually want this guy on our fantasy teams. Whereas if you're drafting him off the board as the RB 20 in like the 4th or 5th round for a guy that Seattle re-signed and they chose not to go in the direction of just giving the ball to Penny, and who has doubled down. You said this last week, Rick. He's doubled down. Pete Carroll's doubled down on running the football this year.
Yeah, which is
Chris Carson's going to get a lot of work. There is concerns with injury, but I think when you're talking about RB20, RB21 value that you're getting back, like he's going to outperform that. And I think that you're also getting in the 4th round, late 4th round, you're probably getting a really, really good running back that you can slide into your RB2 or flex slots. And I think it's honestly at this point a steal, but he has had issues staying on the field. The first 4 games of the season last year, I believe he was just lighting it up. and then all of a sudden he just kind of fell off a cliff after his injury. I believe he missed 4 games. So anyway, I think you can. I'm pulling up some numbers right now, so I'll let Rick talk. But yeah, I think he's a great steal at his pick.
Yeah, it's funny because every year everybody wants the new shiny toy in fantasy, and I'm very much like that. I think you're also like that. It's just how it is, right? Mm-hmm. Like the new players that are coming up, that you're looking for the next breakout running back and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But sometimes there'll be a player who's just good, and they'll be good this year, but they still fall in drafts because they're not like the sexy pick, and that's Chris Carson. But he's been so consistent over the last few years. Last year, I think he was RB13 in points per game. Mm-hmm. He obviously missed some time with some injury, so I think that people look at his season totals and are like, oh, he wasn't that great. Mm-hmm. But in reality, he was just Chris Carson. He was solid. And I think another reason me and you are never too high on him is just because he has a ceiling. Like we know he's not going to be a top 5 running back. Mm-hmm. But he's very good. He's very consistent. Mm-hmm. And when you pick him, it's a good pickup. He's going to be starting in your lineup week to week, and he's a valuable running back, which is probably the most valuable position. And he's going to be solid. He's going to be a very solid RB2. I think he's kind of the definition of a value pick. Mm-hmm. Him being an RB19, like to get the running back of Chris Carson, the level that he is as the RB19 is a steal. I mean, it really is. It's a very solid pick, and you can be comfortable with taking a running back. Like, let's say you take a running back in the first round, and then you go receiver, and you can get a Chris Carson level guy in the 4th round to fill your second running back slot, and now your team looks really good.
Yeah.
And it's rare to go 2 receivers and a running back versus 2 running backs and 1 receiver, and come out with a guy like Chris Carson as your RB2.
Oh yeah, big time. Through weeks 1 through 7 on the season last year, before he ended up missing 4 games, he was running back 10. And that includes the game that he got injured. So, and he was averaging about 15 fantasy points a game, which, is right on pace with the RB6 at the time, which was Kareem Hunt. So he was really good over that course of time. If you pace out his full season totals, he ends up with about 1,300 all-purpose yards, 9 total all-purpose touchdowns, which puts him, I would say, around 8 or 9, RB 8 or 9 on the season last year.
He's really solid,
which is very solid. And I think when you look at that, I mean, he did when he came back from his injury. He wasn't as efficient. Actually, I would say he might have been more efficient. He was averaging
more efficient on the ground. I don't know if he was as efficient in the air.
Yeah, they targeted him so much through the air. Like it was at least for the first couple weeks of the season. There were games where he would have a dud, and then. But I wanted to go through weeks. What was it? 12 through 17, just to get the numbers from there. Give me 1 second. But
I think he was decent in those weeks, but he was definitely more of a pass catching option in those first 7 weeks, at least. Yeah. And that was also when the Seahawks were throwing the ball more. Like that was when Metcalf exploded on the scene. Russell Wilson was the QB1 through like the first 8 weeks, so they were just throwing the ball more in general.
So
in the beginning of the year.
He was RB13 over that course of weeks 12 through 17.
Which is still good.
You put it together like through the whole season, and if the guy had played the whole season, he
like
probably
RB11?
would have finished somewhere around RB11 or 12, is what my guess would be.
And you're drafting him as
RB19. So, and if they do run the football a lot more, and a lot of people are like, oh my God, Penny might come in and take work from him, and you might see who's the other guy,
DJ Dallas.
DJ Dallas come in. I just don't see that as an option. Like Rashad Penny has been given all the love from the fantasy community, but I don't think people realize how buried he's been on the depth chart. For the most part.
And it's also like the Seahawks, even if they do involve those guys, which like there'll be a week where they do, like Pete Carroll will just ride the hot hand, and one of those guys is going to get like 15 carries. Mm-hmm. The Seahawks run the ball so much where it really doesn't matter as long as Chris Carson generally stays the guy.
Yeah,
he's gonna get the most work.
Yeah, fair enough. So let's move on to the next guy. Make sure you get Chris Carson on your teams at the value that he is. Another top value that we see in drafts right now is a guy by the name of Damian Harris, and he's in the running back 30s right now.
38 on Sleeper.
Yuck.
Let me just say that again. Damian Harris, RB 38 on Sleeper.
I'm pretty sure Damian Harris finished higher on the season than RB 38 last year. That actually might be.
No, he only played like 8 games.
Oh, really?
So
Yeah.
he played 10 games.
Either way, I mean, yeah, hold on. I'm trying to find it. He was running back 50. So, I mean, that was with 10 games. The wide receiver 38 was Leonard Fournette last year, and he was averaging the same amount of fantasy points per game.
Damian Harris, let me just say this. We're projecting a breakout with him, and last year, his first season was RB 50 in 10 games, and people are essentially projecting him to do what he did last year, if not worse, through a full 16.
Yeah.
Because if he plays a full 16 last year, he's probably like RB like 30, right?
6 times 9 is what?
Oh, dude, come on! You can't be doing this to me. I'm not even gonna bother. I'm putting up the calculator.
All right, cool.
6 times 9.
I was nervous that my computer would kind of like crap.
54.
To be honest with you. So you said 54?
Yeah.
All right, hold on a second. Doing some quick math.
Oh, I don't know why I didn't do just 6 times 10, which would be 60, and then minus 6, but whatever. We're not going to talk about it.
So that would be 140 fantasy points last year, which would have put him at RB 28.
Yeah, RB 28, yeah.
Yeah, so he's already outperforming his paced out ADP from last year. I mean, his paced out numbers from last year.
And people think the whole point is he could be better than what he was.
No, it's not exciting. It's not enthusiastic. Like I don't love Damian Harris. And I was talking to Rick.
You're not on the Damian Harris people that are saying like he's the RB1 this year in the 10th round.
Some people are pumped.
Sony,
I'm a Pats fan. Rick's a Pats fan. Sony blows, so I'm on that. But I don't. Sometimes Bill doesn't know that, and he'll run with Sony. He'll run with Damian. He'll run with Ramondre Stevenson. He'll run with James White. He'll run with anybody who runs up the middle and gets more than 3 yards.
Maybe Jacoby Myers.
Yeah, maybe Jacoby Myers.
You could see Jonnu Smith getting some carries.
I would say personally, I look at Harris and I think he is the number 1 running back on the New England Patriots, like 100%.
Yes, he is. Yeah.
But there is an issue with how the Patriots run their running back system, and it could be any given week that Sony Michel gets 20 carries, Harris gets 20 carries, James White might get 15 carries in a game. Like you never know who's going to be the running back. Now, in the past, we've seen in the Sony Michel role, Sony Michel was getting over 200 plus carries and getting, I would say, over about 200 plus touches on the season altogether with the New England Patriots when he was the starter. If Damian Harris takes the starter role and that's the position that they put him in, which Bill hasn't even confirmed that that's what they're going to do. So if you're making a projection that Damian Harris is going to be like the guy already, like we don't even know if he actually is going to be the guy from the man himself who's going to play him.
Right.
So for me, like if he gets that Sony Michel role, I think 100% Rick is correct, and most of the fantasy community would be correct that he probably will be I would say between RB 14 and RB 18 is probably where I would peg him. And if RB 38, you're getting a guy who ends up outperforming his position by 20 spots. That's a great flex.
Yeah,
in my opinion, it's not fantastic, but it's a good flex. So I like Harris, but I just want to see more as the preseason goes along. And I think as more stuff starts coming out, like I think Sony could be on the bubble this year. And you could see him being cut and signed on another team who gets, remember last year with Leonard Fournette, something similar to that, where Sony gets cut and then signed in Atlanta or something stupid like that, where they need a running back. So anyway, yeah, Harris is I think he's a great value, and I think at RB 38, he's probably one of the only guys in what round is he, like 9th, 8th round?
9th I think he's like the 9th or 10th. Actually,
so you can get a guy like that in that area.
Oh yeah, starting running back, 100%.
That might actually be. Hold on a second. You give your thoughts on what's his name, because I'm going to try to figure.
Yeah, there's not too much for me to say about Damian Harris. If you listened to our bold predictions show, he was on the list for me. So that's what I'm going to say about that. But he was on pace for over 200 carries last year. On pace for over 1,100 rushing yards. His only thing was he didn't have a lot of touchdowns. He only had 2 on the ground, so he was on pace for 3 total.
He's a 7th round pick right now, according to the average ADP on Fantasy Pros.
What is it in Sleeper, though? Because Sleeper, he's lower. He's lower by like a whole round, I think. Round and a half.
Yeah, 7th, 8th round.
Yeah. Because he's RB like 31 on Sleeper, right? RB 38 on, or RB 38 on Sleeper, RB 31 on Fantasy Pros. Yeah. But yeah, Damian Harris. I mean, everybody knows I love this dude. I think he's just a really talented player who's going to be the starting running back on a team that if you're drafting as the RB 38 is instantly a steal. And like you said, paced out last year, if he just played 16, he would have been RB 28, which is already better than, like, if he's RB 28 again, that's already a decent value that you drafted him as RB 38, and I think he'll be better. So, I mean, this is an easy one for me. I think I'd smash that before he starts flying up boards because I don't think he's going to finish. I think but that was uncomfortable. But I think by this time next month, when you and I are drafting in our home league, and if you guys are in a home league that's the draft is like early September, right before the season, I don't think Damian Harris is going to be RB 38.
Yeah, I agree.
I think he'll be a lot higher.
Yeah, especially if Sony goes.
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, then it's just the hype train.
Yeah. Oh, the hype train would be saddled up, and then Bill would start Ramondre in the first game, and
fuck you guys. It's 25 carries.
Yeah. But anyway, let's move on to the next guy. We only got a couple minutes left. So we'll talk about the wide receivers relatively quickly. Wide receiver 19 off the board right now is Robert Woods. And I think every year, Robert Woods, like, if you want to talk about non-sexy wide receivers,
this is the Chris Carson.
This would be one of the non-sexy wide receivers. But over the last couple years, he's been really good. He was the wide receiver 13 last year, with terrible quarterback play. The year before that, I don't know if he played the full season, but he was wide receiver 17 through 15 games. And so he's consistently been a mid-range. Robert Woods, wide receiver 10 in 2018.
Yeah, exactly.
So you get better quarterback play in 2020 with Matt Stafford, and you still do not have, like back in 2018 when he had the wide receiver 10 finish, he had Cooper Kupp and Brandon Cooks, and so now he's going on a full season without without Brandon Cooks. You know, obviously he's been that way for 2 years, but he's getting really good quarterback play now as the second or number one option on the Los Angeles Rams. So I think you could see Robert Woods outperform that wide receiver 13 finish last year, but if you're getting him as the wide receiver 19, I think that's stealing. And especially and we talk about the context that the wide receiver 12-13 matches the wide receiver 20-24 very closely. If you can get a guy like Bob Woods in that vicinity, where he's getting drafted, like what is that, like round 5? Like you're stealing wide receivers in the middle rounds.
Yep. Yeah, Robert Woods is the most undervalued player in fantasy. He has been the last few years. Like when he finished as wide receiver 10, everybody was like shocked. They're like, they did not see that coming. Like they're like, oh, how did Robert Woods? Like I didn't know he was even that good. He was wide receiver 10. And in 2019, he missed a game. Only had 2 touchdowns and still finished as wide receiver 17. And then last year finished as wide receiver 13 and had 200 fantasy points. And now he's getting an upgrade at quarterback. I get it. He's old. I want to say he's 28, maybe 29, right? He's 29 now. He just turned 29. So he's definitely near the end of his prime, but he's still got a year or 2 left of being capable of putting up big numbers. And with Matt Stafford there this year, I think there's an upgrade to the passing offense. So it's very possible he could finish higher than 13. I know. And you're getting him at wide receiver 19.
we got to move on to the next guy, but I'd also like to note Cooper Kupp as wide receiver, according to Fantasy Pros ADP, is wide receiver 20. So realistically,
he's higher on Sleeper. He's like 16 on Sleeper.
Okay, all right. I was going to say, realistically, like if he is wide receiver 20, either one of those guys really floats.
Oh, yeah. I just chose Woods because he was the lower of the 2 on Sleeper. But yeah, if Kupp is wide receiver 20, that's also great value. Both those guys can be good.
We've talked about this guy before, so I'll just ramble it through real quick. Wide receiver 15, Amari Cooper. Last year in the first 5 games of the season, we talked about this with Dak Prescott. He was absolutely a monster. 200 plus targets. Is that what you said before when we talked about him, Rick?
Yeah, it was. He was on pace for 200 plus targets.
Ridiculous. Now that's not going to happen, obviously, but I think right now Cooper with Dak Prescott is like a top 5 wide receiver if Dak plays to his full potential. And so if that is the case, I think the wide receiver 15 ADP that he is going at right now will be stealing a free wide receiver 1. especially when you're talking about getting him in the fourth round. Late third, early fourth round. So I would say Amari Cooper, definitely a top value, and I would snag him in all my leagues.
Yeah, Cooper's probably the highest rated player we have on this list in terms of like he's the first player drafted, other than maybe Chris Carson. But he's wide receiver 15, which is still pretty high. Yeah, it's still a good value to pick him. And we, like you said, we've touched a lot about Amari Cooper. We've talked about him, so there's not too much to say. Yeah. But I will just quickly say he was wide receiver 3 last year with Dak in those first 4 games, which is ridiculous. And even a full season without Dak, or pretty much a full season, he was wide receiver 16. So you put Dak to that, and he's going to be much improved.
Yeah, much improved. And the final guy we have, because we only got 2 minutes to talk about him, so I'll ramble it off.
That's fine.
Tyler Lockett, wide receiver 24. Last year, our man Tyler Lockett was the wide receiver 9. I know everyone loves DK Metcalf, who also was a wide receiver 7 at that point. But they have one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. They have a really good offense, and Tyler Lockett's going to get the same target share. And I think he's a top 12 wide receiver as is. So if you're talking about a guy, like, it's not a sexy pick like we've said before. When you're talking about a guy like Tyler Lockett getting drafted off the board on Sleeper as the wide receiver 24, there's really no reason for it. Like, he should be getting drafted as at least the wide receiver 15. Like, he should be where Cooper is. But the fact that people are drafting him like literally, I want to say 12 spots higher or lower than what he actually is worth, I think it's stealing. And I think people who get Tyler Lockett are going to sit there in the middle of the season. They're going to go, how did I get this guy in the 5th round? How did I get this guy in the 6th round? And like basically destroy everyone.
Right. And I love these 2 players, and I think they'll be great, all pro type receivers. But right now in redraft, Jamar Chase is going higher than Tyler Lockett, and Devontae Smith is right behind him.
Yeah.
For the guy who finished wide receiver 9 last year, and really, that offense isn't really going to change. Like, Pete Carroll's like, oh, we're going to run the ball more, so fine. Even in previous years, Tyler Lockett's been a very effective receiver, so he's still he's a great wide receiver too in the 5th round. Like, he's probably the last guy available there that I'm comfortable with being my wide receiver
on a 3 wide receiver team.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, that's fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
And it's feasible with his position.
Right, exactly. There you go. Top value picks for the 2021 fantasy football season. We kind of did it. We kind of got it in on time. We have Chris Carson, Damian Harris, Robert Woods, Amari Cooper, Tyler Lockett. Tomorrow we got breakout wide receivers. Be sure to check in. Welcome to August.
See you guys later.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube, and follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps.